Hey guys, what's up? It's another episode of Manipulate This, and today we're going to go over a little bit of portrait retouching and having fun in Photoshop. Let's get into it. So today I have this beautiful image that I downloaded from Envato Plus, a really great resource that you can get tons of free Photoshop stuff and all sorts of great stock images that you can use for your own Photoshop composites. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So today I have this stock image and I wanted to do a little bit of retouching. Now with portrait retouching, there's many different aspects to it. You could do something that's called frequency separation, where you're able to seamlessly smooth out the skin, but that's a little bit more of an elaborate process, and we're not going to cover that today. Today, we're just going to be doing a basic retouching of the skin, and I'm going to show you exactly how I use the camera raw filter in Photoshop to kind of make my portraits pop and come to life by just enhancing parts of the face, bringing your attention to the eyes, as well as smoothing out aspects of the skin. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in, and we're going to start by doing some minor face retouching. I'm going to hit the J key on my keyboard. That brings up the spot healing brush, and I'm not going to go over every single blemish and imperfection. We're just going to go ahead and get rid of these moles by just clicking like that, and we'll click right here and kind of just get that cleaned up a little bit. All right, good. Looks great. Okay. Now, the other thing I really wanted to tackle was kind of the heavy bags underneath the eyes. I feel like that's very important to kind of clean up. I'm not going to go over every little crease and fold in the eye, but I kind of want to get these bags under right here. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of zoom in, still having the healing brush. Just kind of gently just go right over like that. Then we're going to go over to her right eye and kind of do the same thing. And so I'm going to pull the brackets down, and I'm going to kind of just sweep right on over the eye fold like that. And actually, that actually doesn't look too terrible from far away. Granted, I wouldn't use this professionally, but it does the job. Honestly, if you really took the time and sat here and spent probably a good 10-20 minutes, you could probably get these to look really good. But for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just kind of showing you the basic techniques you need to do in order to make it look good. So feel free on your own portraits to spend a little bit more time. I'm going to add in those eyelashes back in. So I'm going to make a new layer, hit B to open my brush, and I'm going to pull this all the way down. Remember, I want a hard brush, and I'm just going to kind of draw her eyelashes back in. Just like that. Okay? Now if we zoom back out, that looks kind of funky. So what we can do is we can pull the opacity down. Just like that. And there you go. And so we're going to kind of move these over here. And voila, she's got eyelashes again. Now see from zoomed out, it actually looks pretty decent. So one thing I do definitely want to jump in and refix though, is if we look over here, let's clean that up. So we're going to hit J again, bring up our brush tool, and just kind of, there we go. All right, cool. So now it's time to do the camera raw portion, which is where we're going to do all the main edits to the face, like making the eyes pop out, certain parts of the face smoother. So let's go ahead and do that. So you can hit Control, Shift, and A on your keyboard, or you can just go up to Filter and Camera Raw. So we can go ahead and zoom in, hit H to use your hand tool to move around, or Control and minus or Control and plus to zoom in, zoom out. So the first thing I want to do is just make some basic color adjustments to the face. These are very minor. So we're going to start by changing the tint just a little bit more blue, just a smidgen. I'm going to bring the highlights a little bit down and the shadows a little bit up. Okay. If you're looking for that cinematic, high contrasty, kind of dramatic look, feel free to play around with the sliders and really push them around, just kind of see what kind of effect you can get. You can achieve that by just kind of pushing things out and blowing it out. But we're going to kind of go for a more on the natural side of things today. So texture, clarity, and dehaze, I'm not going to mess with for the basic adjustment filter. Primary reason is because if you push the texture all the way, it really brings out the creases, folds, and wrinkles in her face, makes her look a lot older. Clarity kind of makes the contrast in the edges of her face a lot more stark and poppy. Not going to deal with that for this. And then dehaze kind of just messes with the coloring for this, and we don't want that. So we will make vibrance come out just a little bit. I'm not going to mess with saturation, curves. I'm going to go ahead and grab down here where the darks are and bring them up just a smidgen. I'm not too worried about this noise in the background here. So, all right, and then detail. We're going to add just a little bit of sharpening, just like that. All right, so now at this point, the main adjustments to the face are done. Well, the basic main adjustments. So now we want to go in with our brush and do some really fine tuning. So the first thing I want to tackle is the eyes, okay? We'll do the eyes, and then we're going to start doing some shadowing on the face, some highlighting, and then we're going to smooth out the lips and the skin. So let's start with the eyes. You can go ahead and hit K on your keyboard or hit this button right here, which brings up the adjustment brush. Make sure that this is selected to create a new one. And if you want to go ahead and reset these, if they're already not reset, just go ahead and double click on the slider right here and it puts them back to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my exposure up just so I can see exactly where I am painting. And I'm just going to go over the eyes like that. Okay, just so I can see. Now we're not going to leave it as this. So we're going to go ahead and pull back the exposure. Okay, we want to untick mask option because it's just going to show this white film over, which just lets us know where we are coloring at. We're going to pull the exposure up just like that. That looks nice. You just want a smidge because together it's a bunch of smidges that make a big smudge, if that makes sense. So with her eyes, I do want to bring out some texture. If I take it all the way to the left, her eyes kind of become dull, but if I pull them all the way to the right, now they almost pop like the movie The Underworld, but we don't want that kind of pop. So maybe somewhere right about there. Clarity, kind of same thing. You can make it much more stark. Again, much more kind of like setback. So let's maybe push it right about 50%. Dehaze, you can make them really dark or kind of have a glow. I'm going to put them maybe right about there, which looks nice. Okay, now a little bit of saturation. You can put them all the way up, which kind of looks a little bit fake, but maybe just a tad. And again, we'll add some sharpness in, and there you go. Now at this point, the eyes are finished, and it's just a minor adjustment. But between that and what we originally started with here, there's a lot more light. And the point of this kind of retouching towards the eyes is it's kind of meant to be a cross between a Hollywood dramatic look, but as well as somewhat realistic. So the point is, when you look at this portrait, where are your eyes automatically drawn to? Your eyes are drawn to their eyes, and that's kind of the point, is to pull you in. Now you can make some alterations and maybe pull down the saturation a little bit, but for the look that I'm going for, I'm going to keep it like this because it's what I like. So now that we're done with the eyes, let's move on to the shadows. So with the adjustment brush selected, we're going to go down here again and hit create a new adjustment, or hit N on your keyboard. And we're going to make sure that all these are reset. Okay, so once that's done, I want to go ahead and kind of color in more of the areas of her face that are in shadow. We're going to kind of boost that. So I'm going to pull this all the way back, again, just to see where I'm painting. And I'm just going to kind of color in here. If you followed along on my match any subject to any background, you'll kind of know that I'm doing my extreme shadowing that I like to do, because I feel like if you start off extreme, not only can you see where you're painting at, but then you could always pull back on it later, and I like to have that control over what it is that I'm doing. I feel like it gives you a lot more power than just doing a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And of course, there's circumstances for when you will do a little bit at a time, but I don't feel like this is one of them. But feel free to find your own style and your own way of doing things. So to make it look like she doesn't have bruising, we're going to pull back the exposure. Again, I like to start at 0 and just kind of slowly, look at that. We're already kind of having that drama. Maybe 50, like that. Perfect. Already, it's not enough to notice, but it's enough to create that illusion that there's more light and shadow being cast on her face. It kind of, again, makes that more dramatic look. So now we're going to do yet another adjustment brush. These will be the highlights. So hit N on your keyboard, and we're going to pull the exposure. We can actually just do 50-50 if we want, for the sake of continuity. All right, so now let's go over the areas of her face, like the bridge of her nose. You can even do it around her eyes. You can do it around over here on her cheeks even. You don't got to go too crazy, but just enough to kind of help create that contrast. Since there's kind of already natural highlighting going on, and it's kind of that way in most portraits, the more thing you want to focus on, at least my opinion, is doing the shadows, because since you already have the highlights there, you're just bringing the shadows up to kind of create that more dramatic contrast. See, if I left the highlights alone entirely, there's not as big of a difference, whereas if I didn't do the shadows. So, but I do like to do the highlights because it does add an extra touch. It might not be incredibly noticeable right away, but it does make a difference. So now that we have the face done like this, let's go ahead and let's do the face and the lips. So we're going to go ahead again, create another new adjustment brush by hitting the N key, pull back down our exposure, make sure everything's set. Okay, so let's tackle the lips. I feel like that's a good place. So I feel that her lips should be a little more brought up in color and probably smoothed out just a tad. So I want to make sure I have that brush, and I'm going to go ahead and just make sure you have your brush selected, by the way. Okay, I had the hand tool selected. I use the bracket keys to move up and down on my keyboard, or excuse me, change my brush size. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of paint over her lips, just like that. Now, as you see, if I move this, you can see, whoops, you can see exactly where I've painted. So we don't want that. What we want, we actually kind of change the tint and just make it a little more pink, or you can make it more yellow. But I like to bring a little more pink, and let's go ahead and change the texture. We can actually kind of experiment and pull this down. See, what it'll do is it'll soften her lips a lot without blurring them. See, already that looks a little bit nicer. And let's actually go ahead, make sure all of her lips are selected, because we don't want it to be where there's parts of her lips that are uneven in color. Yeah, that looks all right. There we go. That looks much nicer. So again, we can always change the tint back. And you don't have to go, you can just go a little bit. There we go. I feel like that's a nice healthy pink. Perfect. Okay, already it's looking much better. Now, let's go ahead and do a final adjustment. This, we're going to do just the face and the skin. So this next brush will be our final brush, and what we're going to do is we're going to smooth out the skin. Okay, you can do frequency separation if you want to do that, but for this, we're just going to kind of do a even kind of smooth, to kind of smooth out the pores and the wrinkles. Okay, so now with our brush selected, we're going to go ahead and color over her face. So I want to bring my exposure up, just so I can kind of see where I'm painting. And I'm just going to go over the portions of skin that kind of have the most wrinkles. I'm not going to go too crazy. I'm going to not so much worry about areas like down here and right around her mouth that don't have as many pores. Not necessarily wrinkles, just pores, just like that. So I'm okay if I miss some areas, because these are going to be the areas that we're going to kind of just smooth out just a little. I'm not talking like blurring the skin, but I am talking about smoothing things out just to kind of make it look a little cleaner. Around the eyes. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not going for perfection. You just kind of want, it just helps the overall image. All right, so now it looks like she's a little pale, or in this case, she's a geisha, but we're going to pull that back down. We're going to leave the exposure alone. We're actually going to just strictly mess with these guys right here. Okay, so if we pull the texture way up, now we have control over all her wrinkles. So we actually want to go ahead and pull this down. As you can see, already her skin is smoothing out. But we don't want it all the way here, because now that looks completely fake. We want to have some amount of realism left. So you can actually just play around with pulling a little bit of the clarity, and I'm pulling a little bit of this. You just want to make sure that she maintains her pores, because you want to maintain that realism. So you can either experiment by pulling this down, but now she looks a little gray, or you can experiment by pulling the texture all the way down. So I'd say maybe about there. And you can actually maybe pull that down to about 30 as well. Dehaze, it kind of makes her skin paler, darker. So you can actually, this is the time we can kind of mess with it, just like about there, -7. And again, you can kind of just fine tune it depending on your portrait. The main thing I don't want it to be so overly smoothed out that you lose, texture of the skin. So I'm just trying to find that perfect balance. I'm going to say right about maybe -35 and maybe -35. We'll call that good. Again, I don't want to go too over the top. So in sharpness, you can also mess with too. If we pull the sharpness all the way down, now it looks like she has blurred plastic skin, but you pull it back up, it almost just kind of looks too sharp. So what we can do to bring back some of those pores, you could pull it this way, or you could pull it just a little bit sharper, just like that, to make sure she still has pores and stuff. So we'll do that. We'll call it okay. And look at the difference already. So there is our finished portrait. And so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a very simple portrait retouching with just a little bit of healing brush and some camera raw filter fun. So here's the edited version. Here is the bland version. The edited version, the bland version. The edited version, the bland version. So I hope you can see the power of just doing a few simple edits. If you found this video incredibly helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more great videos from Manipulatethis to learn more about Photoshop. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.